think the environment has been
What we're saying is have a heart.
We've got to be able to regenerate our
There'll
economy.
be people who are kind, people who are cruel, but that's life. You can be bigoted about bigots. I'm fine with that.
What's wrong with Singaporeans?
About 2 years ago, we have this Institute of Financial Literacy that is doing this free financial talks for corporations. So, and I think there are also many other profit and non-profit organizations offering financial education. But I suppose more can be done.
Now, in the U.S., for example, from this housing crisis, and as we know, Americans at least raked up quite a lot of debt that led into the subprime crisis. They passed a lot of banking regulations as a result of this. And right now, consumers such as credit cards would have to get all the disclosure and explanations about the terms and conditions and so on.
And I think the banking industry in Singapore is also doing something. Now if you apply for a new credit card, when they send it to you, they actually send you a little booklet to tell you about how to use the credit card wisely. And the fact that MAS come up with these new rules changes is to protect people from getting into too much debt. But what I'm trying to say is that for people already in debt, those new rules will have an impact on them because they cannot roll anymore and they have to do something about it. From next year onwards, if you have been rolling for more than 3 months, for more than 12 times of income, all your credit facilities will be frozen. Yeah. So this is something that people have to address it and not get a shock,
And for us, our firm, we actually see the number of increase in bankruptcy as well. As compared to the same period, January last year to like June last year, this year there was a tremendous increase in terms of the bankruptcy file. And also we saw some stats from the government as well, there's an increase as well. So I guess like what Prudence has said, this problem is coming. I guess that's why the government could sense it, and that's why they probably come up with all these things.
But I thought there was so much talk about the interest rate is going to increase, and it is increasing. So when the interest rate increase, that means what? That means
that's a big problem, right?
Yes, that means the mortgage servicing, the interest will go up. Okay, and that is going to impact on people's debt servicing rate, ability. Are they able to service? When the monthly installments,
especially when most of our assets is in mortgages.
I do not know which level you are referring to. If you're referring to the macro level, there is no problem because just the deposits in the bank can pay off all the liabilities.
But you have got very interesting figure. It makes us feel much more.
But I think the figure needs to be data mined.
We have put the perspective on the issue. You see, I think it's been a very interesting discussion, and I think that if I can just pick up from where the professor put the thing in perspective, we do have a debt problem, but relatively speaking, we are not in such a bad situation compared to a lot of other countries. In fact, we're in a healthy situation. Nevertheless, there's an important group of people who don't know how to handle their money and who will face problems when the financial situation changes. I think the upshot of this is that we are not masters. We may think we are masters of our own finances, but we are not masters of our own finances. We should be conscious of dangers of irresponsible spending. We should be conscious of increased cost of living, which is out of our control. For example, the cost of increased interest rates would throw a lot of people off balance. It is also important on a personal basis not to spend everything that we earn thinking that that's for spending, but we should save. And we are a nation of spenders. We should have a buffer so that when we are faced with unexpected circumstances, we won't be in such a bad shape. I'm going to let you end this discussion with just some last words, starting with Sunny.
All right.
What is the future for us?
I think we have to be very careful. I think we live in a society today where debt has become a part and parcel of our lifestyle. Many years ago, when we see an individual with debt, we would look at that person differently because everybody used to pay by cash. Today, when we see someone paying by cash, completely, for example, if he buys something 100% by cash, we look at him differently because he's the minority. So basically, that kind of attitude now is very dangerous. And I think if we don't combat it by financial literacy, by helping those already in it, we will be faced with a very bad situation because, again, from the macro perspective, crisis is happening very, very frequently nowadays.
For me, I don't have a concern on the macro level. I heard about the problems of some groups, and I think that besides education, perhaps the value system has to change. All around the world it's the same, that we go into debt. It's not that debt is by itself bad, because in certain situations debt can also help you acquire something faster. You don't have to wait until you are 55 years old to own your first home. But it's just that you have to understand your ability to pay. So you have to manage the aspiration for your material well-being and so on to match your ability. Otherwise, you could get caught.
What do you know?
I just feel that maybe there should be a little bit more support from the banks, knowing that this is a problem, and the debtors themselves are actually very willing to repay. So if, let's say, the banks can, be nicer, just like Prudence was saying, Amex is, I'm not sure whether we can name the banks, but some banks are really just very nasty, knowing that these debtors are trying to prove themselves in terms of the payment. So if this can be, if we can do it better, I guess we can move this on, and probably we will get a debt-free life. People will get a debt-free life easier. Yeah, that's what I felt.
Let me put it this way, okay? Of course, I would like to say something here about what Sunny said. Yes, it's the way the value which Dr. Sri also mentioned, ideally we use cash. But there's nothing wrong to use credit. And credit helps the economy to grow. But the thing is that also what I said, make sure that we don't borrow beyond what we can pay.
That's right.
So we must make sure we can service it. All right. And with regards to what you say about the banks to be more helpful, based on my working with the banks, is that sometimes it's not the bank itself, it's the officer. Yeah. And sometimes
Exactly.
the banks, they have their own constraint.
Policies, yes.
Especially foreign banks, they have policies from their home country, which sometimes it's difficult for them to do certain things. But generally speaking, when we work with the bank, I would say that the banks are generally speaking pretty understanding. They're pretty willing to lend a helping hand to the people. Really
Is there
do an
some kind of a
exercise.
guideline as
Yeah.
to what percentage of our income we should be spending
Of
and how
course
much
they-
we should be saving?
Okay, there are many suggestions, but generally speaking, now recently we have this TDSR. Okay, the TDSR is based on gross income and is capped at 60%. That doesn't mean that you should go up to 60. In fact, you should go below 60.
60
And
of borrowing, right?
60% of your income.
How many
You
percent
should
of the
have,
balance?
no, wait. $100.
Expenses, yeah.
You saying what it means is that out of the $100,
60 for service,
don't use
60.
more than $60 to service your debt.
Yes. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I agree that financial
Jeff.
literacy is, by far, I think one of the most important things that Singapore needs to focus on. Like you mentioned, the TDSR, that was, a great way of Singapore, that was a great, implementation, to prevent any sort of, bubble, especially in terms of housing, people becoming too over-leveraged. And the funny thing is, from our business side, before the TDSR went into play, about 80 to 90% of our home loans were, approved, no problem. Once the TDSR actually went into action, that number dropped by about 30%, and a lot of them were actually borderline on their TDSR. So that's something that, a lot of these are, at least 7 out of 10 of these individuals are first-time home buyers. So they're in that age range of 25, to 35. And that's actually a pretty worrying number when you think about it, because the TDSR, it brings in your credit card debt. You know, pretty much any sort of debt you're making monthly payments on. And, you know, for that age group to be in that position where they're borderline, you know, approved, you know, or not, it's something that I think it's something to think about. You know, and I think that's where financial literacy does come into play. And, you know, I think there should be more effort to teach, you know, individuals, you know, at the poly level, university level, you know, maybe to make some sort of mandatory course that would teach them, you know, to really utilize, you know, how to utilize credit cards, you know, how to basically make the right financial choices.
Prudence, let's hear from you.
Well, I think I think there is one thing I know after these years of, you know, living 2 years now without a credit card, you know, and I'm one of the few percent that now I pay everything by cash, and I'm very happy with that. To be honest, it's liberating. I must be honest, because I always say that it's now for me when I buy something, do I need it or do I want it? That is what every individual should now think going forward. I would say that it's good to have a credit card. There's always a good credit and a bad credit. The credit card, one must also know that use it only for emergency. And one thing I must say that tell your family if you're in a situation, sit down with them and say, please help me. Don't be shy, because that's the mistake I made. If I had gone to my dad or my mom and told them the truth back in the 1997 when I got retrenched immediately in the financial crisis, and say, hey dad, I'm in this situation, I wouldn't have got snowballed. You know, talk to your family, because eventually, you know, I realized that family, they are the one closest and stick with you. But you yourself have to be individual and responsible to know how much you can spend, how much do you want to maintain that kind of lifestyle. So for me, my advice is have a credit card, but don't have 10 credit cards in your wallet. If you have 10, please snap off the 9 and just keep one.
It's like if you really want to keep one, frankly speaking, if you're one of those so-called compulsive buyer spender type, don't keep, not even one. But if you want the convenience of traveling overseas without bringing a lot of cash, then consider using a debit card. Yeah, that should solve the problem. Okay, and my view is this: if you're already in trouble, no point blaming anybody. Don't blame the bank. Don't blame your whoever that make you spend money on or whatever. Just solve the problem. Address the problem now. Okay, blaming will not solve the problem. But if you look into the problem and take steps to do something, that will solve the problem. I think that is more meaningful.
Constructive.
And that's what I did when credit card counseling came in, and I just said, look, you know, I have to take responsibility. I need help. I just go to them and tell them.
Okay. Thank you, Prudence, Jeff, Huey Min, Regina, Dr. Siri, and Sunny. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
Good night.